Real Story has been to Waterlooville in Hampshire to take the temperature.
I'd like to know more about what we can do to perhaps save paying the government all of our money.
As more people arrive to take advantage of free advice, it becomes clear there's real confusion over how best to minimise the impact of inheritance tax.
Have you got a will in place?
Yes, I have. If I go, everything passes over to the wife.
If you leave everything to your wife, you're not using your nil rate band. You know, it's currently £285,000.
Gifting sums of money every year is another way of bringing down the size of your taxable estate.
You know, you're allowed to give, is it 3,000? Is it 3,000 per child, or is it three?
No.
It's just one 3,000.
Gifting much larger sums to people is also possible, but it comes with a catch.
If you give away a large sum of money, then you've got to survive for, what, 7 years?
The ideal technique is that. As much as I think how vigorous you want to be with this planning.
Quite vigorous. I don't want the taxman to get
You really
any
don't
more.
want it.
It grieves me that my husband died young, so he's never lived to get his pension, and then they're going to come along and take the savings that we built up as a couple.
The UK is heading for a big problem. As we go through the baby boom generation and we get an ageing population, there's going to be more and more people with more and more wealth that think they're going to leave a nice nest egg to their children. No, because a huge amount is going to be payable to tax that they never knew existed or never planned for.
1,500 people die in the UK every day. More than 1,000 of them don't leave a will or plan their financial future. John and Brenda Rose are in their mid-70s. Their house is worth £350,000, and they have some savings on top of that. It was their eldest daughter who alerted them to the potential of inheritance tax being charged.
Well, my husband and I decided it was time to have some wills drawn up, and the house became an issue because it was over the amount. You know, the values have gone up so much with the houses, and it looks like we would pay inheritance tax. So it was suggested that to be tenants in common would be a good idea. So I mentioned this to my parents because with the house prices here as well, we you know, thought it might affect them too, which it has done.
Well, we have 3 children of our own, and we have 6 grandchildren, and we wanted to be able to leave something behind. And we realised that the government was going to take a big lump of the inheritance.
John and Brenda created a trust, a tenants in common agreement. This doubles the value of their tax threshold, so their children will only pay inheritance tax on anything over £570,000.
Income tax refund, £20. That's a fat lot of good.
The potential drawback to this kind of tax planning is that control eventually rests with the children, who need to cooperate fully with each other.
I'm sure someone's cheating. The only thing is, of course, the trust system is that you can really only do it when you've got a family that work together. It is very sad to think that some people actually have to move out because they've got to pay this tax because mum's died or whatever.
But there are legitimate ways around it. Annette Mace had to face the truth about inheritance tax when her husband died unexpectedly a few months ago.
My husband passed away very suddenly in April this year. He had deep vein thrombosis, of which we had no warning at all.
In a difficult time, Annette was plunged in at the deep end of complex tax matters. She had no tenants in common agreement and realised that if anything happened to her, her 2 daughters, still at home, would be liable for inheritance tax and might have to sell up.
If someone had said to me 6 months ago where I would be now and this very steep learning curve that I have maintained over the last 6 months, I would never have believed them, because it was always my husband that did all the dealings with the finances and always my husband that did all the dealings with anything official.
Annette's discovered a loophole. She's been able to make a tenants in common agreement retrospectively for her daughters. It's the difference between having to pay inheritance tax and sell the family home, or pay no tax and be able to stay in the house.
When a death happens, your spouse passes away very quickly, you become very aware of just how life can be very short. So I was very quickly made aware of if anything had happened to me, our children would have to suffer their problem of inheritance tax and all of the substantial expense that involves.
The rules are complex, so she has to get advice from her solicitor.
Had I seen you and your husband before his death, I would have talked to you about the subject of what we call discretionary will trusts. And the idea behind...
By acting quickly, it's now unlikely her daughters will ever have to pay inheritance tax. But Annette is annoyed that she's had to play legal games at such a difficult time.
Into a trust.
I know it's something that everybody doesn't want to think about, but it is very important that they should be thought about, so that when the time comes that you are going through the trauma of someone's death, you don't have the additional problems of all of this. It's just handed straight over to whoever it would be, and it's all sorted out straight away. You don't have any additional anguish and heartbreak at the same time.
The Halifax Building Society has calculated that the current inheritance tax threshold of £285,000 should in fact be £430,000 to take account of average house prices in Britain. So long as this trend continues, many more families are likely to find themselves having to sell treasured family homes to keep the Chancellor happy. Most people would probably think that selling their parents' house when their parents die is what they expect to do. You know, they've got their own place to live in at that point. They don't necessarily want to keep their parents' house.
Well, yeah, it is what happens. Parents buy houses, they sell it. But here, this is something that's been in my family for 500 years. It's a house that my family have built. It isn't something that they've been out and bought, and it's just a pile of bricks. And when my family built this with their bare hands, it's sort of... a bit of wood was put in by a great-granddad of some form. It's something that's been built by us, plus it's my mum and dad's house. It's where I grew up. It's where my family's grown up since the 1600s, plus it's where I work. It's my livelihood as well here. I mean, so it's not just a fact of selling a house. I'm selling my workshop. I'm selling where I earn a living. So everything's changed. If this gets sold, then my life takes a complete tangent, really, and it's one that I don't want to take. It's one that I shouldn't have to take.
The people we've featured in our programme are far from wealthy. They just find themselves in the position where spiralling house prices means that their houses have increased as an asset, and they suddenly find themselves over the threshold and paying a tax they never thought they'd be liable for.
Every year the threshold is going up.
So by 2008, the inheritance tax threshold will be
£325,000. It's going up every year.
But will that increase keep pace with rising house prices and bring relief to people like Dorothy and Sue Stempson?
We used to think inheritance tax was only for rich people. That's why we never used to worry about it. But here we are, stuck with what is really technically now quite a white elephant, because we're lumbered every way. Every which way.
The increasing number of families affected by inheritance tax. And if you'd like more information about the tax or sources of advice, check out our website, bbc.co.uk/realstory. And that's all for this week. Until next Wednesday, bye-bye.